When a nation's land registry vanishes in an instant, headlines scream security failure. But for engineers watching closely, this was never just about bad passwords or firewalls. It exposed a catastrophic architectural flaw, a system built like a library with no version control, unable to survive the pressure of modern threats. Today, we connect that headline to the engineering trade-offs behind the collapse and what an AI-era infrastructure would look like instead. The common instinct is to blame the hackers for being too clever or the security team for missing a patch. This narrative feels satisfying because it points a finger at a specific villain. But when you strip away the fear, the real story lies in how data was modeled before anyone ever thought about an attack vector. The system that wiped out Romania's land registry wasn't just vulnerable, it was fundamentally designed for a world where trust was assumed and changes were rare. It treated critical property records like static text files rather than dynamic assets requiring strict transaction isolation. In engineering terms, the difference between survival and total collapse often comes down to how we handle data immutability and redundancy. A legacy monolith in critical infrastructure is built for read-heavy queries. Think of a system designed only to look up information, much like an ancient archive that tracks historical land cover changes through pollen samples found in sediment layers over thousands of years. Such systems are excellent at reconstructing the past, but terrible at handling the chaos of the present moment when simultaneous writes occur or data is corrupted. Consider how statistical models handle complexity. In studies analyzing garden and build-up area distributions, researchers often find that real-world variables follow rigid mathematical patterns, such as prime number factor distributions described by the Dickman function. These are beautiful theoretical constructs for static analysis. However, applying a model designed for 5 distinct time periods of historical ecology to a live, high-frequency transaction system is a recipe for disaster. When you treat dynamic human activity like fossilized pollen data, expecting it to remain unchanged under pressure, any disruption does not just cause an error, it causes the entire structure to unravel because there was no mechanism to roll back or isolate the failure. Quick resource note: I keep a curated set of Amazon search links in the description for books, gear, and tools relevant to this channel's topics. Some are affiliate links, so I may earn a commission at no extra cost to you. Please consider supporting the channel by using those links if you find something useful. The gap between security and architecture explains why this specific incident resulted in a wipe rather than a recoverable glitch. Security tools focus on keeping doors locked. Architecture focuses on whether the building itself can stand up if someone breaks in, cuts the power, or floods the basement. A secure system with poor data modeling is like a fortress built of sand. No matter how strong the walls look from the outside, one wave washes it away completely. In this case, the lack of transaction isolation meant that once an attacker could modify a record, there was no internal guardrail to prevent that single modification from cascading into total data loss across the entire registry. This is where the lesson shifts from blame to design philosophy. We must stop treating databases as simple storage buckets and start viewing them as active participants in system resilience. An AI-era engineered database does not just store facts, it understands context, versioning, and state consistency. It operates with a level of redundancy that allows for immediate rollback without human intervention. When you build for the modern threat landscape, you assume failure is inevitable. You design systems where data integrity is enforced through immutable logs and distributed consensus, ensuring that even if one node is compromised or wiped, the truth remains preserved elsewhere in the network. The contrast between a legacy monolith and this new standard of engineering is stark. Legacy systems often rely on single points of failure because they were built decades ago when connectivity was limited. They assume that once data is written, it stays there forever unless an administrator manually deletes it. This assumption holds for reading historical pollen data or analyzing plot sizes from 2007, but it fails catastrophically in a world where digital assets are constantly changing and under constant assault. The Romanian incident serves as a grim reminder that the tools we use to record history must be robust enough to survive the present moment. For practitioners building today's infrastructure, the takeaway is clear: security cannot be an afterthought bolted onto poor data modeling. You need transaction isolation layers that prevent partial updates from corrupting the whole state. You need backup redundancy that operates in real time, not just as a nightly schedule. And you need to design for immutability, ensuring that every change creates a new version of truth rather than overwriting the old one silently. These are not abstract concepts. They are the difference between a system that recovers from an attack and one that ceases to exist entirely. As we look at the future of data engineering, the focus must shift from preventing attacks to surviving them with grace. The most secure database in the world is useless if its architecture cannot handle the shockwave of a breach without total collapse. We are moving towards systems where resilience is baked into the core logic, ensuring that even when things go wrong, they do not disappear. This approach transforms how we think about critical infrastructure, turning fragile monoliths into resilient networks capable of withstanding modern threats while maintaining the integrity of the data they hold. The path forward requires a fundamental shift in mindset for every developer and architect working on these systems. We must prioritize structural integrity over superficial security measures, because that is what ultimately determines whether an organization survives an incident or vanishes from the digital landscape forever. By learning from failures like this, we can build the next generation of infrastructure that stands firm against whatever comes next. Thanks for watching all the way to the end. I am a one-person team working hard to make each video better than the last. Subscribe if you found value. It is the best way to show support. Drop a comment with your biggest takeaway. See you in the next video.